We have a disclaimer that this is the best information we know. The final information comes from the New York DHSES, and always rely on their information. We just try to interpret it, and they have the final word. The applications are due January 13th. If you're here for the Connecticut NSGP, they've already closed their application period. I will give you back an hour of your day because you can sign off. For 2 decades, I opened the presentation with the following. You shouldn't lose points or be disqualified. Rule number 1 is learn how to read and follow directions. Rule number 2, there is no rule number 2. See rule number 1. Now let's talk about pre-qualification, e-grants, mission statement, vulnerability assessment, and the investment justification itself. Finally, and again, this is all available on our website too. You have all these documents available. And if you have specific questions, you send them to grantinfo@dhses.ny.gov. They will take your questions in writing until January 6th if you have a specific question for them. Some of the things that we're going to discuss today, there is no perfect answer. You can ask them, but they probably will just regurgitate what they put in their request for applications, their RFA document. Who's eligible? Basically nonprofits. Anyone who's a faith-based organization, is a religious corporation, you're automatically exempt, and you don't need a recognition letter. I'm not going to go into the details here. If you have specific questions, post them in the chat on eligibility. You can get basically $200,000 per site. You need to submit a separate e-grants application and a separate vulnerability assessment for each grant. And you can, if you want, if you have camps upstate and institutions downstate, and some do, you can request for all 6 locations, and so long as it doesn't exceed $600,000. And one quirk that we haven't been able to get them to fix is that multiple requests for NSGP funding from the same physical address, building, facility, structure will be deemed ineligible. So what you need are different addresses. So for example, JCRC is in the building with many, many other nonprofits. Fortunately, it's a huge building in Midtown Manhattan. And each office has a separate +4, ZIP+4 zip code. So they have not only that they're room 1400, but they have a separate zip code. And because they have a separate zip code, New York State will allow multiple applications from that building, but they can get strict on this. Basically, we're not going to discuss pre-qual too much. It's unfortunate, but if you are not currently pre-qualified, if you haven't started pre-qualification, even though we believe in miracles, it will take a miracle for you to be pre-qualified by the 13th. Things change, but if you're not currently pre-qualified, I urge you to get pre-qualified, and the state grants will be out sometime in January, and set your sights to get a grant from the state grants. You also need e-grants. Here's where you register your organization, and it may be too late to submit a new application. This is just for your determination. If you are awarded a grant, You will have to have an UEI, a unique entity identifier, but you won't need that until you're an awardee. Don't waste your time right now. There's very little time available. For people, just so people know, Jewish organizations in New York City, Long Island, and Westchester can apply for a loan if bridge loans. If you are an awardee, the grants are reimbursement grants. So you have to lay out your own money and get reimbursed. Hebrew Free Loan has a loan that covers that. Okay, now on to the real stuff. You need a vulnerability assessment. It identifies the threats based on previous incidents, intel. It lists your vulnerabilities and will make recommendations on how to fix it. And basically, there are threats, vulnerabilities, consequences, and then you figure this all out and then you make your investment. Okay, these can be done by lots of organizations. Truth be told, if you don't already have a vulnerability assessment, none of these can deliver by January 13th. You can use a self-assessment tool or a school security survey. Again, download this slide and all the links will work. This slide set. What can you buy? Basically, access controls, bollards, blast-resistant doors, contract security, closed-circuit TV, and management administration will go. And here's the full list of what you can buy. And this unallowable list isn't quite complete. You can look for a bigger list in the request for applications. This is just to tell you what people did last year. 13% changed their doors or upgraded their doors. 13% upgraded their video recording systems. 12% upgraded their access control. 12% used the available management administration funding. 11% did their windows. 8% did bollards and fences. 7% lighting. This is a review of everything that was successful. Contracted security, big question. First of all, it's very, very important. It's critical to get funding for contract security. You must have a vulnerability in your assessment that can be mitigated through contracted security personnel. So, for example, if your assessment says that you have inadequate access control of people entering the building, then you can hire guards to mitigate that, saying that the guards will be in charge of screening and admitting both your constituencies and other visitors. When you do this, you have to estimate the hourly or daily rate, the number of personnel that you're hiring, anticipated number of hours or days that the personnel will work over the course of the period of performance. And you can say, I'm getting guards for 1 year, I'm getting guards for up to the 3 years of period of performance. By the way, we're already 3 months into the period of performance, and it will be 6 months or more. So figure 2 years period of performance that you're going to have a contract by the time you have access to your money. In other words, don't expect to have access to your money before summer 2026 and possibly later. We don't know. We remember that we were waiting for the results of the NSS grant, and the results came out months after what they had committed to when they released the grant last December. Also, NSGP funds may not be used to support security personnel costs that the organization already had in their budget prior to the grant award, as this would be considered supplanting. I've heard some very interesting Talmud commentaries on this sentence. This is directly lifted from the RFA. I'm not going to explain it any further because I don't know exactly how they check on this. If you have a campus and you want a guard to have a golf cart to get around the campus, you can't use NSGP funds for that, but you can specify in your contract with a guard company that they supply a vehicle and build that into the cost. That has been approved in the past. Cybersecurity funding will apply to systems that protect, for example, your access control system, your video surveillance system, etc. If it happens to protect more, Gamzu La Tova, it's all the better. It will cover training and exercises. Here's some examples here of what kind of training, but remember that everything has to be pre-cleared. You can have a budget here, but then you have to talk to your program rep and say, hi, we want to do a Stop the Bleed training. And by the way, Stop the Bleed is specifically listed in the RFA. So, all of these things are possible. And just so you know, to save you money, those of you in our catchment areas, our RSDs will offer much of this training at no cost to your organization. I mentioned management and administration. So you can have 5% of your total up to $10,000. This must be requested in your investment justification, and you can read some details, but you have to, again, talk about retaining an outside consultant and with the number of hours and the hourly rate. If you just say $10,000, they will bounce your application. You have to give the details. Okay, this is one of Dove's favorite slides, which is don't bite off more than you can chew. People say, oh, $200,000, I can do so much with that, and I'm going to do my doors, I'm going to do my windows, I'm going to do I'm going to do an access control system, and I'm going to upgrade my cameras. This is not an easy grant to administer. Once you have the money, the work really begins. And people can end up biting off more than they can chew. They can ask for too many things. We recommend think of maybe 3 items, no more. If you have multiple items that you can get from one vendor, for example, the electronics, the access control system, you're putting in interlocking doors and video cameras, and you buy all that from one vendor, you might be able to do that. But these are very complex items. You have to supervise the bidding and the installation. So there's a lot to do. Dov, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, if I can just add, thank you. Remember, once you're awarded, every project, even like David said, if you can use one vendor, still every project based on the code, how you apply, requires 3 bidders. That's a lot of work and a lot of vendors to bring in and to go through. And I'll add that we haven't said in previous years, there are some groups out there, and especially some consulting groups, that like to specifically throw everything at the wall. and say, let's put in 10 things, and then afterwards we'll adjust and figure out. With the reality of how FEMA is right now and what the future may be, we don't know. I think adjustments to approve budgets is going to be harder to do. So I'd advise,
Well,
it doesn't mean you have to have perfect
yeah,
numbers. I just don't think you'll be able to move and get rid of categories as easily as it used to be. It wasn't easy, but even that would not be able to do so. I'd be a little bit more careful, like David. Maybe three categories plus M&A is our general advice. Plus, most people under budget for projects to do what they need to do effectively.
I just want to say to do what's called an IJ modification, they have to assess whether you still would have gotten the grant without those items. And they have said no in the past. And it might get harder. Dov is absolutely right. It might get harder. So you might have your whole grant withdrawn. And by the way, Dove runs a terrific service to support you. You can ask for some help post-grant. If you already have a grant and you want our help, you're welcome. The investment justification. Okay. It's a fillable template. You must use their template. You download it to your computer, and then you try to open it with Adobe Acrobat. If you try to click on it in a browser, it will bomb on you, and you'll get frustrated. Download it, and then open Adobe Acrobat, which is free, and then you will be able to access the whole investment justification. You need investment justification for every site you're applying for a grant. It summarizes all these elements, and you must be occupying and fully operational out of the facility listed in the vulnerability assessment. We get this call, this question dozens of times a year. We're building a new building. It'll be open in June. We have to submit now. Well, sorry, you must be occupying and fully operational is the words in the RFA. And IJs are reviewed by DHSES and then on a federal basis. Here's the background section. It doesn't matter if you own or lease the premises as long as you have the owner's permission to make any security enhancements, because people get a grant and they want to put up cameras and the owner says, no, you can't put up those cameras. These are the questions there. There are more questions about background. I mentioned the UEI. You could say yes or no, depending if you have it or not. Don't waste your time now trying to get it. Go ahead. You'll need a mission statement. Here's some examples. A lot of places have a mission statement on their website, but remember in your mission statement, the grant distinguishes and advantages people who are at risk for ideology-based reasons, spiritual reasons, or are religious entities. Their grant total is multiplied by 3. If you're a medical educational institution, it's a 2. If you're a parochial school or yeshiva, you get the religious entities. That's fine. But if you're just a secular school or a medical facility, you get multiplied by 2. Everyone else is standard. What you have to do is to be in it, you have to really have a mission statement that qualifies you for the triple award score. What's your primary organization type? You select one. Your organization's primary affiliation. I notice we have at least some Christian organizations. I didn't see everyone. And there are options under the drop down here. Again, the UEI number, you have, once you win a grant, you have to get it. If you're in New York City, Long Island, and Westchester, you are in the New York urban area. If you're in anywhere else in New York State, you're applying, you say no, and this asks you what county you're in, and it's a separate grant program. Here's a background. They want mission, purpose, symbolic value of the building, and it might make you a target of an attack. They also ask if you've been helpful on recovery. And so, for example, if you helped support your congregation during COVID, that's important. If you're doing anything, ongoing work with your local police or emergency management, tell them. If you attend webinars, tell them. It's better to have something in there than nothing. If you get nothing, you get 0 points, and the goal is to get 40. Symbolic value. Here's some sample language. And now we get into the real meat of the investment justification, which is the risks section. And that covers 15 out of the 40 points. And remember, there's a strange equation here in the in FEMA land that made up the rules. Risk is equal to a combination of threat, vulnerability, and consequences. And you can quantify this, but you're not required to. Don't worry about it. But remember that you're going to be answering questions on these 3 items. You want to protect against likely terrorist or extremist-based threats. Active shooter, you're vulnerable to armed assaults, cyber attacks, explosives attacks, vandalism, arson, and vehicle ramming. I quoted the Comprehensive Preparedness Guide. It didn't include these. If it was rewritten, it would. Now, they ask you to identify and substantiate specific threats or attacks against you or a closely related organization. Now, the most important element of this is what happened to you. In other words, did you receive a threat, a nasty email, a threatening email, a threatening bomb threat, something on social media? Any of that should be included and documented. Threats to your own institution, a nearby institution, closely related institution, Jewish organizations in New York City, Long Island, Westchester, Rockland can ask for their regional director for help, and they will give you things that happen in the region. Now, currently, here's 2 examples. This conflict, this is from June, and they were talking about Gaza. The conflict could motivate violent extremists and hate crime perpetrators seeking to attack targets perceived to be Jewish or pro-Israel or linked to the U.S. government or military in the homeland. That includes you. The December 14th, NYPD said, according to their analytic findings, there have been 48 major incidents targeting synagogues in the Jewish community events worldwide. And then they mentioned last week in Sydney. A year ago, there was an arson attack on a synagogue, etc. So these are the kinds of things that can happen to synagogues. Here's another link. In general, against religious facilities. So anyone who's non-Jewish, you can pick up examples there. If you're non-Jewish, if you do a Google search, you can find, for example, the Ascension School in Minneapolis had a active shooter. Last Friday, there were 7 bomb threats to parochial schools in the Kansas City diocese. So those are things that you can mention. Here's some sample vulnerability language. Consequences. This is, I often see people who don't do this well because according to official FEMA Think, there are four kinds of consequences: human, economic, mission, and psychological. And you have to cover all of them. So what would happen if there was a terrorist attack on your institution? There's a human toll, death and injury. There's a death or incapacitation of organizational leadership, has an impact far beyond the institution. Economic, it will cost us millions of dollars to replace our building. And what happens to our programs while we don't have a building, the consequences to your mission or psychological, and then mention secondary outcomes. For example, what we find is that if there's an attack on one facility in the neighborhood, there's a spillover attack. Other example, what happens if you're running a preschool program? Where do the parents send their kids if someone doesn't have adequate childcare, which you were providing most adequately? Where can they continue to work if they don't have the childcare? Okay, next section, this is a big one, is facility hardening. You want to, in a narrative form, discuss the proposed activities, projects, equipment, identify the estimated cost, and then critical, people always miss it, describe how they will mitigate or address the vulnerabilities. So proposed activities should directly tie to the prevention of and a protection against the risk of attacks, and they should relate back to a specific vulnerability. I already mentioned this in terms of security, but it applies for everything that you're asking for. So, for example, if we change our door and we upgrade our door and access, that will deny access to a potential bad guy, but it also deters them. It deters them. It slows them down. So you have to kind of discuss all of this. Here's some sample language and more sample language. And here I talk about exactly how you do contracted security. And they can deter hostile intruders, deny them entry, or at least delay their entry to the facilities. Guards can also trigger both audible and central station alarms, which could mitigate damage and injury. This is the kind of language that wins. You want to use FEMA's magic words: interdiction and disruption, delay, divert, intercept, halt, apprehend, or secure threats. You want to do screening, search, and detection. So guards also do screening. Physical protective measures, those are doors and video surveillance systems, on-scene security, and cybersecurity. These are all listed specifically in the national plan. Here's some more sample language. I tried to give people lots of sample language to use. The template has drop down. So you click on this button and it shows you the areas, and you must choose one of the areas. If you don't choose that, if you want lighting and you don't choose lighting area fixed, if you want parking lot lighting, and you don't choose it, you will lose points. And this year, by the way, there's 40% less funding. So there will be roughly 40% fewer grants. And if you lose points, you might, by just ignoring the drop down or not listing anything else, answering another question, you will, you can put yourself out of the running. Cost estimates. This is a direct quote. Organizations are not required or expected to use exact numbers. Educated estimates are acceptable. You can talk to one vendor and say, what do you think this will cost? And here's some of the magic words from the national priorities. Okay, milestones. This is an example. I kind of made up some dates here, but what's important is, let's say that they give you an answer March 15th. Well, that's the start date. And these are the kind of things that you need to do. There are some projects, for example, if you want to, if you have an interlocking door project, which we often recommend at CSI. Well, the interlocking doors, the electronics for the interlocking doors cannot happen until the doors are installed and operable. They're looking for the fact that, the key activities and descriptions and how they interrelate. You can't award a bid until you search for a contractor and you do bids according to New York State procurement rules, et cetera. So we recommend that you use all 10 milestones. And if you do, you're probably going to get 5 out of 40 points. This is going to go through August 2028. And yes, August 2028. So you have to get everything in that time frame. Project management. They want name, phone number, email address, and experience of project managers. First of all, put all of that in. If you leave out the email address, you're going to lose points. Experience, using your board members who are accountants, lawyers, real estate people, security people. That's available. If you work with CSI, put down CSI, because everyone who is a judge knows that CSI exists. If you say that you're going to ask CSI for help, that's good. Impact. They want measurable outputs and outcomes that will indicate that this investment is successful at the end of the period. First of all, you state that 100% of the funding is centered on improving and increasing the physical security. 100% is measurable. Hardening to enhance the protection of soft targets at crowded places by addressing the vulnerabilities in our vulnerability assessment. Soft targets in crowded places are a component of the national priorities. That's good news. And then you can say X percentage awarded for contract security, for target hardening, percentage for cybersecurity measures, percentage for training awareness campaigns and exercises. These are all available. If all of it is for target hardening, 100% of the funding awarded is for target hardening. That's fine. Now, I started to talk about points, and the total 40 points plus bonuses is the record amount. 70% talks about risk and mitigation, and 30% of the points talk about knowing how to implement your plan. They want to know, if they hand you $200,000, do you know what to do with it? And this is what DHS is going to do on January 14th. They're going to look at your application complete. In other words, did you upload everything that they require? Are you pre-qualified? If you are not pre-qualified on January 13th, you will not get a grant. They will just set your application aside. They will not even review it. Are you tax exempt? Same thing. Do you have a UEI? If it's no, it's not a problem. Did you attach the investment justification? Is a copy of your mission statement attached to the application? Remember I told you needed a mission statement? Well, you need that attached in eGrants. And all of this is uploaded in eGrants. And by the way, if you looked at the first slide, there is a terrific tutorial at the beginning of a link to the tutorial at the beginning of this presentation, and use it. What I do is I click on the tutorial, and then if I am submitting an application, I just go through page by page by page, and I look at what does the tutorial tell me to do, and then I do it. Do you have the vulnerability assessment attached, including one for every site that you're applying for? Do you have only one vulnerability assessment per site attached to the application? Do not get one from the police department and then do a self-assessment. That's two, and they may disqualify you. Do all the projects align with the vulnerabilities as noted? Every year, people ask for things that are not in the vulnerability assessment. If that happens, you're tossed out. And is everything allowable? Same kind of thing. They ask you about funding history because if you've never received this before, you get extra points. And there's been a lot of discussion about terms and conditions. Yes, technically, there are terms and conditions about DEI and immigration advocacy listed in the federal grant. There is, but how that will apply is unclear. We strongly urge you to apply because at least as of today, there's an injunction. The federal government is enjoined not to enforce any of those requirements. Who knows what will happen in if you get a grant, and by that time, everything can change in this world. So, there's more information, follow the link. People are really, I've had a couple of questions saying, I don't see the DEI immigration requests, the demands in the RFA, in the request for application that the state put out. But the state has a master contract. You are not bound until you sign your contract. And the master contract, page 3 of the master contract has part M. This is what it says. You're bound by every federal requirement. Who knows what the federal requirements will be when they award the grant? This is how you calculate the score. First of all, there's a first-time grantee bonus. Then there's a mission-based bonus that we already discussed. So let's say you get a 40 and you're a house of worship, you get 40 times 3, which is 120. And you've never gotten a grant before, so you get the 15-point bonus, you get 135. Then DHS will take everyone who received a 135 and rank order them based on needs and practicality and impact. That we're looking at among the 135s, who uses it the best, then the 134s, then the 133. Basically, I think this year you're going to need at least a 37 to succeed out of 40 and get a multiplier. In 2024, they didn't have this again, but I want to reiterate, you want to clearly identify your risks, vulnerabilities, and consequences. You want to describe the findings from your vulnerability assessment, which should do this. Details of any incident, including description states, etc. Brief description of any supporting documentation. Remember, we talked about if something happened to you, that's going to be something that bumps up you in the rank order. If nothing happened, thank God. But explanation of how the investments will mitigate or address the vulnerabilities, establish a clear linkage with investments and core capabilities. Remember, I had said protecting soft targets, crowded places. All activities proposed are allowable costs, realistically milestones, and project manager that has experience. Now, what I advise everyone to do is to do a draft of your investment justification, recruit a colleague, and then download the scoring matrix and go through. This is the scoring matrix that the judges are required to use. Go through it with a colleague and decide, for example, did you provide a description to include symbolic value, blah, blah, blah. You can get 3 points here. So if you left this blank, you get a 0. If you did a poor description, you get a 1, an adequate description, a 2, and a full, clear, and effective description, you got a 3. That's how they'll do it. Look at it, step through it, and and improve your score based on this session. You can improve your IJ and improve your chances of winning. And here's the information that we can do. We can open this up for questions.
All right, David, there's a few questions in the chat you might be able to address. Finding this information, the tools, everything David spoke about, please, like we posted in the chat a few times, CSINY.org/security grants. David puts all the top-notch information, truthfully, for all areas, both pre-grant, pre-qualification, post-award. You'll really find it there. And most of the questions we get throughout the year, we're able to find that source. It's a lot, but the grant takes a lot to do. So I would familiarize yourself.
We have multiple organizations within our building, all of which are nonprofits. We apply. The rule is 1 per building. This, write to the CSI underscore questions at CSI-NY.org, and we'll contact you in terms of a one-on-one. It's not worth spending time here. If you're a community medical center, can we aim for Jewish Community Center? No. If your primary mission is community medical center, then you're a 2-time. Your mission reflects it. If your mission shows that you're a Jewish community center, go for it. But if your primary mission is medical, it's medical. Under the allowable costs, maintenance and sustainment. If I'm reading this correctly, we can apply for maintenance contracts and agreements. Yes, you can apply for licenses over the life of the contract. So this is not for 10 years, it is until August 2028. Previous grants, we replaced the equipment, but maintenance contracts weren't allowable. You can build it in specifically. I want to confirm the amount we can request for security guards. You can request all of it, as we said in the slide. If we are a Jewish community center serving the entire community with no regard to any demographic, should we select? Yes, you are at risk as a Jewish community center because you say Jewish. And so you should say you are a religious entity. A self-assessment is fine. I'm just going through these. Can you apply retroactively? You can only get reimbursed for expenditures during the period of performance of the grant. Even if you get notified of a grant in March, you probably won't have a signed contract with the state until the summer, and you can only get reimbursed for things done after you have a signed contract. Justification form does not allow for all the information I need. Too bad. The IJ is set up to limit the number of characters you use, and you have to be more concise and try to get all the information. If you feel answers are not complete, I have worked with people and we use common abbreviations and other things to try to fit in as much relevant information as possible. I want to confirm the amount. You can use the full 200,000. It has to be justified in the in the vulnerability assessment. And they're going to look at your vulnerability assessment and saying, hey, you should have changed your doors, and you're spending all this money for guards. We think that doors were more important, and you might get marked down because of the impact. But the full amount is allowable, especially if you've had grants in the past and you've mitigated your existing vulnerabilities. If I'm on a project team and I've worked on a successfully funded award at my prior employers, would it help that I had prior experience? Look at anything that you know is to your advantage, but they don't tell you anything. The only place they ask for your experience is in the project management section, and the project management section, can say it's a good thing to say, I'm now going to manage this project, and I successfully did it at the East Egg Jewish Center. Do we need to attach police reports? Yes, that's always helpful. If you only need $100,000, enjoy. They won't penalize you for only needing $100,000. Our risk assessment is being written by CSI, may not be completed by the deadline. That means, by the way, that you've only recently applied for one. We've been telling people to get risk assessments, and the grant could come out at any point with a very, very narrow window. We've been doing this for 7 months, 8 months, Dove. So go for it.
Email your RSD to check in on that one. We're humming. We're pumping a lot out. So
yeah, we're
but
pumping them out, and Dove has to review all of them, but he's working on it. There is the possibility that the due date will be extended. No, you've had plenty of time to do this. Sorry to be so blunt.
All right, David, well done. Thank you. Well, thank you, everyone, and thank you, David. Of course, this information is all available again at csiny.org/security grants. And with David's information is there. I also reach out to your regional security director, and if you don't know them or haven't worked with them, it's also on our website to find the right security director and their contact. All right, thank you, everyone. Also, what David didn't mention is in a few weeks, we'll do another quick summary or roundup before the application's due. So please make sure you're signed up for CSI emails and notifications so you can register for that one as well if you have additional questions. All right, thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.